This is the new Kanto ORA active speakers, not powered speakers. Is this the new standard for desktop listening? I don't know. Let's find out together. Sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Kanto ORA. Shockingly, this is the first Kanto speaker I've ever had in Cheap Audio Man Studios. And when I say Cheap Audio Man Studios, I mean my house. So when Kanto reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in reviewing the ORA, I was excited. However, I didn't know that they were going to be this small. I'm generally not into small desktop computer style speakers. Now this is more than really a computer speaker, something like the Klipsch Pro Media. You remember those? You get those on a crazy deal, even at places like Walmart and what is that place I hate? Costco. That's right. I've also had a Logitech little computer setup, and it was really good. It had a tiny little subwoofer. But what I will say, the difference between the Logitech and the Kanto, pretty big. Let's talk about some specs. So one of the first things to talk about with these speakers is they are active speakers and not powered. I didn't really know what the difference was, but an active speaker is when you're doing DSP for the crossover, and each driver actually gets its own amount of power. So it's not like a powered speaker where pretty much you just have an amplifier inside one of the speakers and then a traditional crossover. Now the amplifier is a 50 watt times 2, but then it's split out between the woofer and the tweeter. I think each woofer is getting 16 watts per channel and each tweeter is getting 9 watts per channel. Yeah, that's right. Somehow I got that right from memory. Each speaker comes with a 3/4 inch silk dome tweeter and a very small 3-inch woofer. It's paper cone. Very cliche to say, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I was shocked at how much bass these little things, and good bass that these little things made. I'm gonna call one speaker the brains of this pair, and that would be this one. Right here you have the power and the input selector knob. There are 3 inputs. You have USB-C, you have a Bluetooth, and then you have an RCA input for all your analog needs. And on the back, you have the Bluetooth pairing button. However, when you just put it in Bluetooth on the front, it actually just showed up on my phone. Bluetooth actually sounded pretty good, which was crazy to me. And right next to that on the top, you have the USB-C input. Again, plugged it right into my Mac Studio. Popped up, I was able to select it, listen to a little bit of Tidal music on these. And I wanted to see how this would handle masters. And it worked. Played FLAC, played masters, also dropped it down to 320 kilobits per second, or the lowest streaming version of Tidal. Worked flawlessly even when I was switching tracks. I did hear a little bit of a hiccup once, but that's not uncommon. I hear that a lot. It never dropped out during the song either, so it handled different bit and sample rates just fine. And I don't even know if there's a DAC inside here. I have heard that active speakers somehow don't have like a dedicated DAC chip. Anyway, the takeaway is if you're listening to different bit and sample rates, the ORA is going to handle it just fine. And then you have a subwoofer output right there. RCA inputs right here. Power receptacle right here. Comes with a 24 volt 2.5 amp power supply. This one. And then a 4-pin XLR cord goes from this one to the other one. The knob on the front here is plastic. Exterior is this is a plastic speaker. Also a threaded insert right here on the back. So if you want to put these on the wall or put them wherever you want with a threaded insert, you certainly can. And these are very light. Even the one with the amplifier is Not heavy at all. I was a little nervous when I got these. I'm like, ooh, plastic. How is that going to sound for a speaker enclosure? Well, let's talk about how they sound. For the sound test, I didn't really use my traditional tried and true test track playlist. I just turned on Tidal and I just ran through whatever it was playing. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, I Love Rock and Roll. Terribly recorded song. But I could hear how terribly recorded it was, which is not a criticism of the speaker. If anything, that is a compliment, because if it didn't sound terrible, then this speaker would have zero clarity. And it did have clarity. The one thing I was very concerned about is with small powered or active speakers, there can sound like a TV speaker where it's all mid-range and it's kind of like this. There's no bottom end, no top end, just piercing, unbearable vocals. And I can tell you, that's not what I got out of the ORAs. When I hooked it up to Bluetooth, I played Santa Monica by Everclear. That's right, Everclear. One of my favorite songs. The guitar was plucky, the guitar was airy, the guitar had reverb, vocals were clean, but most importantly, it was really good and it was not too forward. I maxed these out as loud as they would go. 80, so probably 18 inches, 2 feet away, 84 dB, and there was zero distortion. I think that's one of the coolest things about having an active speaker is it can kind of control things to make sure there's no clipping or distortion. However, the bass is amazing. Now, you're not going to get earth-shattering low-frequency roll-offs here, and I looked it up. I couldn't even find a low-frequency roll-off. But for my listening, for my type of music, there was plenty of lower mid-range and bass punch, which is probably around 80 to 100 hertz. Now, when you hook up a subwoofer, it automatically puts a crossover. But when I hooked up the Kanto Sub 8 to these, it was seamless. Now, I did have to dial it in, and I ended up landing on 90 hertz on the crossover. I probably could have gone up a little bit more, but I didn't really feel like I needed to, which again blows me away for a speaker of this size with a 3-inch woofer. I know it doesn't really come off on camera, but this woofer right here is smaller than a tape measure. Well, maybe not smaller, maybe it's about the same size as a tape measure. And the difference between the ORAs and all the other computer speakers that I've had is there has never been any amount of bass. If anything, those speakers would get crossed over really high, 120, maybe even 130 hertz, and it was always just treble and maybe a little bit of the mid-range coming through. And if you wanted to warm up the speakers at all, you had to mess around with the subwoofer levels. I hesitate to say this, but if you're just using this for music, you don't really use a subwoofer. Gaming, use a sub. If you're doing this for mastering, if you're a musician, or if you're a videographer and you're doing editing, probably add the sub if you really want to hear an accurate lower end. So, what are my final thoughts? Final thoughts. So, it looks like you can't buy this directly from the website. I did pull up a listing on B&H Photo. They're selling for $350 or $349.99 from B&H. Audio Advice has them at $349.99. Not cheap, not super expensive, but not cheap. If you want to add the Sub 8, you're going to spend about another $200. The Sub 8 on Crutchfield is actually $199.99, which is $70 off. And it's a really good little subwoofer. 8-inch front-firing sub. It's sealed, goes down to 35 hertz, up to 175, 150 watts per channel. Perfect for a room, perfect for actually an apartment or secondary room, maybe a hi-fi yurt or an office or anything like that. Actually, a really good little subwoofer. I was impressed. It doesn't have a variable phase, which is my favorite. It does have a phase switch though. And a sub at $200, generally you're not going to be getting variable phase control anyway. Good weight to it too. The reason I'm saying this is for $550, so $550, you're getting a remarkable sounding little speaker and a subwoofer that can go down to 35 hertz. If you want a desktop solution, if you're gaming, if you're making your own music, if you're making your own videos, if you spend a lot of time at your desk and you want a very inobtrusive system, for $550, this is actually a very good deal. The only other powered speakers that I've heard that can hang with these are from U-Turn, and I think those are around $550. Didn't have any type of USB-C inputs or anything like that. That was a Class AB powered speaker though, and it sounded like a Class AB powered speaker. It sounded very, very good. Probably the best sounding smaller powered speakers I've heard. But now with the ORAs coming in at $350, and if you want to add a $200 subwoofer, now you don't have to buy the Kanto subwoofer. You don't have to buy any subwoofer really. But if you add a sub, I think you're going to be shocked at the sound coming out of these things. Kanto also sells some Kanto branded stands. Now you can get stands similar to this off of Amazon for powered speakers. Probably, I don't know how much these cost. Probably going to be a little bit cheaper than Kanto. But if you want to keep it all in the family, Kanto has this one, which is a little bit taller. I wish I was a little bit taller. This is 3.8. When I was in my fraternity during Hell Week, they played that song. I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I had a girl and I could call her. For 24 hours a day, for a week, we heard that same song. Anyway, 3.8 inches high. They also have this little one, which is kind of just tilts them up. That's another thing. You definitely want to get these things isolated, because with as much energy that's coming out of these little speakers, it will vibrate. There will be some resonance with something on your desk. And I had that and I was like, ugh, a little bit of resonance in the mid-range, but it wasn't the speaker's fault. It was actually my desk's fault, just because I have stuff all over the desk. When I isolated them, when I put them on a stand, that resonance went away. So for your own sake, put the little rubber bumpers on the bottom of here if you're just going to set them on the desk, but I wouldn't recommend that because they're very directional. So if you tilt them up at you or you have them on a stand, make sure the stand is isolated from your desk with rubber bumpers or whatever. Really impressed. Really impressed. Recommended. Recommend the Kanto ORAs. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Blah, 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 blah. Links in the description are probably affiliate links, although I don't think I have an affiliate link for these. Sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Roon. Links in the description. Those are affiliate links too. You can also buy me a cup of coffee. Down at the bottom of the video, there's a tip jar. It's a thanks button. Don't feel compelled to give me any money at all though. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu unless you're using these on your computer. Binge listen with the Kanto ORAs and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.